You're in Lower Gook. It's 2002. You're camping frenzy ghouls for that sweet XP. Making good progress. Your group is vibing and everyone's got their rotation down. It's been a good session. Then you hear it. Footsteps, fast footsteps. Someone's running and they're getting closer. You look up. A player comes around the corner at full sprint. Behind them, 20, maybe 30 ghouls. All aggro'd and all angry. All following this one player who's heading straight towards your group. They run right through your camp. The ghouls lose interest in them and immediately turn on your group. You try to run, but it's way too late. Your healer's dead in seconds, your tank goes down, and you're next. And in the distance you hear it, the laugh. The player who trained you is far enough away now that the mobs reset. They're alive, you're all dead. And you just lost hours of XP because someone thought it would be funny. Welcome back to MMO Madness Behind the Troll Mask. I'm Boss Mode, and today we're diving into one of the oldest, simplest, and most infuriating griefing tactics in MMO history, train pulling. It's been destroying people's gaming sessions since the 1990s, and you know what? It still works. Let's talk about why this tactic never gets old, even when it's absolutely should. Before we get into the chaos, let's define what we're actually talking about. Train pulling, also called training or death trains, is the act of intentionally aggroing a large number of enemies and then running them towards other players. The term train comes from how it looks. You've got one player in front and behind them is this long line of enemies all chasing in single file, like a train. The player is the engine and the mobs are the cars following behind. The basic mechanics are simple. In most MMOs, when you aggro an enemy, it chases you until you either kill it, it kills you, or you get far enough away that it loses interest, or it finds a new target closer to it. Train pulling exploits the last part. You aggro a bunch of enemies, run them past other players, and the mob switch targets to whoever's closer or easier to hit. Now, there are different types of trains. There's the accidental train where someone bit off more than they could chew and is genuinely running for their life, hoping to escape. This happens to everyone. You pull one mob, accidentally aggro two more, and panic and run. You're not trying to grief anyone, you're just trying not to die. Then there's the semi-intentional train where you're running from mobs and you see other players. You've got a split-second decision. Do you run away from them and probably die, or run towards them and share the problem? Most people choose self-preservation. It's not malicious, but it's also not entirely innocent. And there's the deliberate grief train. This is when someone specifically aggroes as many mobs as possible with the express purpose of running them into other players. They're not in danger. They have an escape plan, usually zoning, dying in a specific spot, or having abilities to let them break aggro. This is pure trolling. Different games handle trains differently based on their mechanics. In old school MMOs like EverQuest, mobs would chase you forever and hit incredibly hard. Death meant losing experience, potentially losing levels, and having to do corpse runs to get your gear back. Train pulling in EverQuest was devastating. In World of Warcraft, mobs leash. They'll only chase you so far before resetting. But you can still train people if you're quick about it. And in PvP servers with faction-based aggro, you can train enemy players with mobs that won't attack you but will attack them. In survival games like Ark or Rust, train pulling works with dinosaurs or wildlife. You aggro a Rex, run it into someone's base, and let nature take its course. Same principle, different settings. The key thing that makes train pulling so enduring is that it's built into the fundamental mechanics of how MMOs work. As long as games have enemies that chase players and can retarget, train pulling will be possible. Developers have tried to eliminate it for 20 years and they've never fully succeeded. Let's talk about where train pulling came from and how it evolved over the decades. Train pulling goes all the way back to the earliest MMOs and even before to MUDs, text-based multiplayer games in the 80s and the early 90s. Even in text, you could type command to aggro enemies and then move to rooms where other players were. The mobs would follow, and you'd leave your problem for someone else to deal with. But train pulling really became an art form in EverQuest, which launched in 1999. EverQuest was brutal. Death penalties were severe, and the mobs hit hard. And crucially, there were no leashing. Mobs would chase you across entire zones until they caught you, or you zoned out. This created the perfect environment for train pulling. Players would aggro entire dungeons worth of enemies and run them to zone exits where other players were camping. The phrase "train to zone" became legendary. When you heard someone yell that in chat, you had seconds to get out of the way or you were dead. Some of the most famous EverQuest trains happened in places like Lower Gook, Belfallen, and Kithakor Forest at night. Kithakor was especially brutal because high-level undead would spawn at night in a zone where low-level players quested. Griefers would train dozens of these undead to the newbie areas and cause absolute massacres. The developers tried to fix it. They made some mobs stop at zone lines. They added leashing to certain enemies. But the community had already embraced train pulling as a part of the game's culture. Some players even saw it as a legitimate tactic. If you're competing for a spawn or a camp spot, training your competition out of the area was considered fair game by some. World of Warcraft tried to learn from EverQuest's mistakes. They added universal leashing. Mobs that got too far from their spawn point would reset and run back. But WoW players found workarounds. You couldn't do massive cross-zone trains, but you could still pull enough mobs a short distance to kill people. And on PvP servers, you could use faction-based aggro to train enemy players with mobs that were friendly to you. There were also specific exploits, like using mind control on enemy faction NPCs to train them to your own faction cities, or kiting world bosses to populated areas and letting them rampage. Blizzard would patch these exploits, but new ones would always emerge. Other games tried different solutions. Final Fantasy made most overworld mobs pretty weak and added aggro timers. Guild Wars 2 made enemies automatically scale their difficulty based on how many people were around. But even in these games, you could still technically train. It's just harder and less effective. The modern incarnation of train pulling exists in survival games. Ark, Rust, Conan Exiles. These games have dangerous wildlife that can be led to other players' bases. And it's the same concept, evolved for a new generation of games. What's fascinating is that after 25 plus years of train pulling being a known problem, developers still haven't figured out how to completely eliminate it without fundamentally changing how enemies work. And maybe that's okay, because accidental trains are a part of the chaos that makes MMOs feel alive and unpredictable. All right, let's get into some legendary train pull stories from across MMO history. This is one of the most famous train pulls in MMO history, and it wasn't even griefing. It was an attempt to kill an unkillable boss. In EverQuest, there was a raid boss called Carafin the Sleeper. He was intentionally designed to be impossible to kill. The developers made him so strong that no guild should be able to beat him. Killing him would trigger a permanent change to the server. He'd break free and terrorize the world. One guild, Ascending Dawn, decided to try anyway. They gathered hundreds of players and engaged the Sleeper, but they couldn't win the traditional way. So they did something insane. They trained him. They pulled the Sleeper across zones, gathering every single high-level mob in the area along the way. They created a death train of epic proportions. The Sleeper plus dozens of dragons all chasing this massive raid force. The plan was to use all these mobs to help damage the Sleeper while the raid stayed alive long enough to finish him off. It was total chaos. Players were dying left and right, the server was lagging, other players in the zones were getting caught in the crossfire. They actually managed to get the Sleeper down to about 26% health before the developers intervened and literally crashed the server to prevent the kill. When the server came back up, the Sleeper was at full health and the guild got a warning. But the legend lived on. They tried to kill an unkillable boss by training half the server's mobs at it. That's train pulling as high art. This one is from WoW's early days. The Barrens was this huge starting zone for Horde players, full of lobies questing. Lots of people, relatively weak mobs, pretty safe overall. Then one day, a max level player decided to create chaos. They went to all the elite mob spawn points in the Barrens, the ones that were way too strong for the lobies in the zone. They aggro'd every single one of them. We're talking thunder lizards, raptors, elite centaurs, everything. Then they ran this massive train through every single quest hub in the Barrens. Crossroads, Camp Tuhara, everything. Just obliterated everyone. Quest givers were getting killed. Fight masters died. Lobies trying to turn in quests got one-shotted. The best part, this was before WoW had the technology to reset quest NPCs quickly. So these quest hubs were just broken for hours. People couldn't progress. They couldn't turn in quests. They couldn't even fly out. The Barrens was basically unplayable. The griefer recorded the whole thing and posted it on forums with a title like, "I broke the Barrens." They got banned, obviously, but it was legendary. People still reference that train pull in Barrens chat to this day. This one's from RuneScape, and it's technically not a train pull. It's a bug exploit. But the chaos it caused was very similar. In 2006, a player named Duriel321 discovered a bug during a player-owned house party. The bug let him attack other players outside of PvP zones. Normally, you can't attack people in safe zones, but this bug broke that restriction. He went to Falador, one of the most populated cities in RuneScape, and just started killing everyone. Banks, shops, quests everywhere. No one was safe. He killed dozens of players, took their items, and caused absolute pandemonium. Other players who learned about the bug started doing the same thing. For about an hour, multiple safe zones became war zones. The entire game's economy was at risk because people were looting massive amounts of items from players who thought they were in a safe zone. Jagex, the developers, had an emergency shutdown on all servers. They rolled back some accounts, banned the exploiters, and patched the bug. But the damage was done. The Falador massacre became one of the most infamous events in RuneScape history. It's not exactly train pulling, but it has the same energy. One person's actions causing chaos for everyone around them in a way the developers never intended. We talked about corrupted blood in the creative griefing episode, but it deserves a mention here too because it functioned like a train. When the players figured out they could spread the corrupted blood plague outside the raid, they started deliberately training it to major cities. They'd get infected, summon their pet in a capital city, and watch as the disease spread like wildfire. Low-level players would die immediately. The disease would jump from player to player, NPC to NPC. Major cities became plague zones. And the trains, they were the infected players running through crowds, spreading death wherever they went. It was train pulling with a disease instead of mobs, and it was devastatingly effective. Blizzard had to hard reset multiple servers to stop it. This one's from Ark, Survival Evolved, showing how train pulling evolved into survival games. A player spent weeks training a high-level Rex, a massive T-Rex that could destroy basically anything. Then they found an enemy tribe's base. Instead of attacking it themselves and risking their gear, they aggro'd their Rex and trained it to the base. The Rex proceeded to destroy the entire base, walls, foundations, storage boxes, everything. The defending tribe tried to fight back, but the Rex was way too strong. By the time it was over, weeks of building progress was gone. The attacker never even entered combat themselves. They just let the Rex do the work while they watched from a safe distance. It's the ultimate evolution of train pulling, weaponizing AI to destroy your enemies. Back to EverQuest for this one. Kithakor Forest would spawn high-level undead at night. These undead were way too strong for low-level players who quested in zone during the day. Some griefers figured out they could create a loop. They trained the undead to the zone entrance where players would enter from the safe zone. New players would zone in, immediately get destroyed by the train, die, and then respawn back to the safe zone. They tried to enter Kithakor again, same thing happens. This created a death loop where players literally couldn't enter the zone without dying instantly. The griefers would maintain this for hours, killing hundreds of players who just wanted to quest. Eventually, the GMs would intervene, but the damage was done. Kithakor at night became a place players learned to avoid entirely, not because of the intended difficulty, but because of the train-pulling griefers. So, why do people train? What's the psychology behind deliberately ruining someone else's gaming session? Let's start with the accidental trainer, because that's most of us at some point. You pull too many mobs, you panic, you run toward other players hoping they'll help you, at least share the aggro. It's a survival instinct. You're not thinking about griefing, you're thinking, oh God, I'm gonna die. This isn't malicious, it's just human nature under pressure. Then there's the competitive trainer. In games where resources are scarce, camp spots, rare spawns, quest objectives, training becomes a weapon. If someone's camping the spot you want, you train them out. You're not doing it to be evil, you're doing it because you want that resource and they're in the way. It's cutthroat, but it's motivated by competition rather than pure trolling. The boredom trainer is someone who runs out of content or gotten bored with their regular gameplay. Training is entertainment. It's emergent gameplay that the developers didn't intend. Watching chaos unfold, seeing people react, creating memorable moments, that's the fun in its own way. They're not necessarily trying to hurt anyone specifically. They just want something interesting to happen. Then you've got the revenge trainer. This is someone who got wronged. Maybe someone stole their mob. Maybe they got ganked. Maybe someone was rude in chat. Training becomes a payback. It's petty, but it's motivated by a sense of justice, however misguided. They feel justified because they're getting back at someone who they perceive as deserving it. The power trip trainer is in it for control. They like that they can affect other players' experiences. They can make people log off, force people to run, disrupt entire zones. It's about feeling powerful in a game where maybe they don't have much power otherwise. The chaos they cause proves they matter, that their actions have impact. And then there's the pure troll, someone who trains specifically because they know it's annoying and they enjoy making people mad. The reaction is the goal. They want to see rage in chat. They want people to complain. They want to feel like they've gotten under someone's skin. It's not about competition or boredom. It's about causing negative emotions in others for entertainment. What's interesting is that train polling often starts as one motivation and morphs into another. Someone might start training out of boredom, get a huge reaction, and realize they love trolling. Or someone might train for revenge once and then make it their whole identity. The other factor is social reinforcement. If you train someone and your friends think it's hilarious, you're likely to do it again. If you post a video of massive train pull and get thousands of views, that's validation. The attention becomes its own reward. All right, it's practical advice time. How do you survive when someone trains you? And how do you get revenge if that's what you are after? First, situational awareness is key. If you're in a high traffic area or a known griefing zone, keep an eye out on your surroundings. Watch for players running at full speed towards you. Listen for sounds of approaching mobs. That's a few seconds of warning that can be the difference between surviving and dying. When you see a train coming, your first instinct should be to run perpendicular to it, not straight away. If you run in the same direction as the person training, you're following them and the mobs are right behind you. Run sideways and the mobs will likely keep chasing their original target past you. If you can't avoid the train, zone out if possible. Jump over a zone line. Enter an instance. Use teleport. Get out of the area entirely. In games where that's not an option, try to get to water or terrain that breaks line of sight. Sometimes mobs will reset if they can't path you. Use your defensive cooldowns. If you're about to get hit by a train, pop every defensive ability you have. Shields, armor buffs, damage reduction, whatever you've got. Sometimes you can survive long enough for the mobs to reset or for the person who trained you to get far enough away. If you're in a group, stack up an AoE. Sometimes the best defense is offense. If the mobs are already on you, you might as well try to kill them. Group up so healers can keep everyone alive and burn through the mobs as fast as possible. For revenge, there are a few options. The petty one is to train them back. If they're trained you once, return the favor. Show them you're not an easy target. Sometimes that's enough to make them move on to someone else. The strategic revenge is to get them banned. Record the train poll, screenshot them bragging about it in chat, and report them with evidence. Most games consider intentional training to be griefing and will take action if you provide proof. The social revenge is to put them on blast, share their name in zone chat, post about them on forums or Reddit, warn other players. Make them infamous in a bad way. Public shame can be effective, especially if it affects their ability to find groups or guilds. The ultimate revenge is to turn their train into your advantage. If they pull a bunch of mobs to you and you survive, you now have access to those mobs for farming. I've seen groups specifically bait trainers to pull mobs to them because it was more efficient than pulling the mobs themselves. But honestly, sometimes the best response is to just log off and do something else for a bit. Don't give the trainer the satisfaction of knowing they got you. Don't rage in chat, don't threaten them, don't feed the troll. Deny them the reaction they're looking for, and they'll usually get bored and move on. Train polling is one of those things that make MMOs simultaneously frustrating and memorable. It's been around since the beginning, and it's probably going to be around as long as MMOs exist. Is it annoying? Absolutely. Can it ruin your gaming session? For sure, but it's also one of the most emergent behaviors that makes online games feel alive and unpredictable. You never know when chaos is going to come running around the corner with 20 mobs behind it. If you're someone who trains people for fun, I'm not going to tell you to stop. You're going to do what you want to do. But consider the impact. Is it funny to ruin someone's hour-long camp session? Is it worth getting banned? Are you creating a story where people will laugh about, or are you just being a dick? And if you've been trained, remember that it happens to everyone. Even the best players get caught by surprise trains sometimes. Don't beat yourself up about it. Learn from it, adapt your awareness, and move on. At the end of the day, train polling is a reminder that in MMOs, other players are the real content. Whether they're helping you or griefing you, they're making the world feel alive. And sometimes, years later, getting train polled becomes one of your favorite gaming memories because of how absurd and chaotic it was. Next week on MMO Madness Behind the Troll Mask, we're diving into the fake raider leader, trolling 39 people at once. We're talking about the griefers who led entire raid groups to disaster, the saboteurs who pretended to know mechanics, and the chaos that happens when one person controls the fate of dozens. You definitely don't want to miss it. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and support the podcast. Tell your guildmates, share it on Discord, and leave us a review. And if you've got a legendary train poll story, whether you were the conductor or the victim, email me at podcast@mmomadness.com. Until then, watch your back, keep your escape routes clear, and remember, if you see someone running at full speed towards you, run the other way. I'm Boss Mode, and hey, thanks for listening today.